You're listening to The Mountain Spirit, a podcast of Christian Appalachian Project, where we share inspirational stories of faith, service, and compassion. I'm a firm believer that we're all connected by our shared humanity, and that finding that intersection sometimes just means having a conversation. Today we get to hear from John Oliva, a mechanical engineer who also serves with Christian Appalachian Project as an ambassador. John helps recruit college students from around the country to serve at WorkFest. This is an alternative spring break program that works to make home safe, warm, and dry for Appalachian families dealing with the distress of poverty. He also serves as MC for the evening programming to bring some fun to volunteers after a long day of service. Each spring, for more than 30 years, CAP has hosted college students from across the country for WorkFest. This annual event is followed by YouthFest, which is a similar opportunity for high school students. Since 2011, John has been to WorkFest with the Catholic Spartans every year except for one. The Catholic Spartans is a Catholic student group associated with Michigan State University. In 2015, he started Mercy in the Summer, a series of summer volunteer opportunities which engages MSU students with local community service projects to enable them to follow Christ's example of service to people in need in the greater East Lansing area. Last year, CAP's home repair program repaired or rebuilt 307 homes, including over 100 homes damaged by floods. Students who come for WorkFest learn how to make home repairs like putting in new windows, building a ramp, fixing a roof, putting on siding, or providing an addition. John, thanks so much for being a part of that great work. Welcome to the show.
We met 5 or 6 years ago on a work site at Christian Appalachian Project, but I don't think I know much about your background. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up in the Oliva household?
All right, so I grew up on the south side of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I think I grew up in a, pretty typical working class household, very car oriented, let's say. So my parents ran an automotive repair facility. My dad was a mechanic his entire career. And then my mom did the business bookkeeping side of that, in addition to working in a series of car dealerships around the Milwaukee area. And then on top of all that, we also ran a car wash. And so, like I said, cars were kind of everything growing up. And my sister and I, we worked at the family business. We both worked at the car wash all through high school and college. I think overall we had a pretty good childhood, and, our Catholic faith was a big part of our family growing up. Went to church every week, and my sister and I went to Catholic grade schools and Catholic high school. But yeah, aside from that, I think it was relatively unremarkable.
So for a guy from the Midwest, what drew you to Appalachia?
Oh man, that's kind of a long, twisty road, right? So I think the starting point, though, is the high school that I attended. I went to Marquette University High School, which is right down Wisconsin Avenue by 5 or 10 blocks, whatever it is. So a Catholic Jesuit high school in the center of the city. And, being Jesuit, service is a very big deal for the faculty, for the staff that are running the school. They instilled that just mentality of service into all of us as students. And I think that's where, my love of serving really took root. And so 4 years of high school kind of started me down that path, doing just any number of service projects, both formal and informal, during my high school days. And then I think another big piece was that my sister started her career as a youth minister. And so part of, again, this was at a parish in Milwaukee. And so I was in grad school myself the first time around while she was at this parish doing youth ministry. And she always wanted young 20-somethings to be chaperones for these trips, because she said, if I take parents along, they can't stop being parents. So she said, if I can get 20 or 30 somethings to take along as chaperones, that's a good role modeling for the kids. And so I'm like a first-year grad student, and I just turned 25. And she's like, "Oh, you're the magic age that you can rent a car right now, and for it to not be a big deal." She's like, "You're coming on one of these week-long summer mission trips with me." And I was like, "No, I don't get that much time off of school. I don't want to spend my week off with a bunch of high school kids I've never met out in the middle of nowhere." But she signed me up, as most big sisters will do, right? And so, with little planning, I suppose, I found myself on this week-long service trip. Happened to be in the UP of Michigan that time around, and just had a blast, had the time of my life. And so then wound up doing several of those trips with her group. She eventually moved on to a different role where she was no longer doing that. But then it was only 2, 3 years later, something like that. And my wife and I belonged to the parish that ministers to the campus population at Michigan State University, St. John's Student Center. And through that capacity, we were just at church one weekend, and they announced in summer that they were looking for permanent parishioners as compared to the student parishioners. They were looking for permanent parishioners to accompany their student groups on alternative spring break. And so I signed up for that. And again, I don't know that I was really given a choice as to what trip I was going on. And next thing I know, I'm in East Kentucky serving with a bunch of college students that I just met, and just really fell in love with CAP from that very first trip. And that was something like, I guess this is year number 14. So time then through the years just kept expanding, both my involvement with the student group at the church parish, but then also with my involvement with Christian Appalachian Project.
So I know that you are a hilarious MC at WorkFest each year. So for folks who may not be familiar with WorkFest, paint a picture of what that week looks like.
Sure. So WorkFest is the Christian Appalachian Project's alternative spring break program. So we invite college students from around the country to come and serve for a week. And so for a week's worth of work days, these college students are going out on work sites that CAP line up for them. And, I often equate it to like the work that folks are familiar with Habitat for Humanity, because I think they have a national presence and a lot of people are familiar with them. But we're most often doing like home rehabilitation projects for the families, for the individuals that we are serving in East Kentucky. And so the students go out, and even regardless of what experience level they have, they are participating in this construction work. So we have skilled individuals on each work crew that can teach the students any of the skills that they need to pick up, learn how to use the tools, learn how to use the material, and really get their hands involved with being the hands and feet of Jesus in this work that we do. And so the work is obviously a huge part of what we're doing, but then we have a lot of programming that goes on back at the retreat center that serves as home for these young people for the week, planned devotions each day, and we have planned activities in the evening. Like we'll have a concert night where a local performer will come in and put on a little concert for the students. We have like an Appalachia 101 session where we teach them about the region. But then at the same time, we're kind of out in an isolated region, and so there's not a lot of other things to do, so we make our own fun, and there's just all sorts of crazy shenanigans that kind of fill in the gap in the midst of all those other more formalized things that we're doing. I try to make it fun because I want these folks to have a good experience and to keep coming back. And, I've always said I'm not a good enough Christian that if you told me for WorkFest I was going to go out and work for 8 hours and then come back to camp and just quietly reflect on my day, and I probably would have been gone after the first week. And so honestly, a big part of what keeps bringing me back is that fun, the craziness, the interaction with the students. And so, like you said, part of my role as CAP ambassador, I'm also an MC for WorkFest, so I do all the onstage activities during 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks during WorkFest each year.
I think I've kind of heard that you are the king of shenanigans there, John Oliva. So I know that you said you want the kids to have a good experience and to be engaged and to want to come back. What do you hope that they leave with when they've come, whether they've come the first time or they've come multiple years? What do you want that takeaway to be, or hope that takeaway is?
So, I have this like little meme of a quote that I pull out at a lot of different recruitment presentations and things, and it's from Dorothy Day. And she says, "We must talk about poverty because people insulated by their own comfort lose sight of it." And I think that's very true in my own life. As you said, I'm a professional engineer. My wife works for Michigan State University, so we have a very comfortable life. And, honestly, if I work from home every day permanently. And so if I chose to ignore poverty and not see it, I could go through most of my life without really having a direct impact on myself. And the reality is that many of the college students that serve with us at CAP during WorkFest are going to find themselves in that same position. The vast majority of young people that I've known that have volunteered at CAP will go on to very successful careers in whatever their chosen field is. And there too, if they haven't been exposed to poverty, if they've never taken a week to reflect on what that really looks like when you start looking at families that have been impacted by multi-generational poverty, and just in a area like the Appalachian Mountains where you just have these very dense regions of poverty, those college students could go on and live their life and not even know that those sorts of challenges exist. So I take that week to hopefully educate them and show them how many people in our own country, in our world, have a much different lifestyle than what they do. I hope they take those memories with them as they go on in their careers, but I also hope that they come back to help and serve with us at CAP again in the future.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you want to have fun this summer while saving money for college? Be a summertime superhero as a camp counselor with Christian Appalachian Project at one of our 2 beautiful camps. You'll have a great time and make a difference in the lives of kids in Eastern Kentucky. Our camp counselors have a blast outside boating, creating arts and crafts, and playing games with our campers. The kids love the activities, but what they remember most about camp are the volunteers who cared enough to spend their summer with them. While you're here, you'll earn an educational award that you can use towards college or trade school, and other benefits too, like a financial stipend. Email volunteer@chrisapp.org. That's volunteer@chrisapp.org, or text 859-797-3059 to learn more. We can't wait to hear from you.
So I heard you say that it's been about 14 years or so that this work has been impacting you, and I know you brought students, you brought alumni, but tell me how coming to Appalachia has impacted you personally.
Oh, so many ways. If you look at those 14 years, you figure my daughter is 17 right now. My time serving with CAP has very much overlapped her childhood, and I often say that my wife and I have gone out of our way to give our daughter an unusual childhood from, that perspective of showing her that not everybody has it as good as we do. And so from a very young age, if my wife and I were volunteering at a soup kitchen, or if we were doing homeless outreach, or any of these other things that we get involved with through the student parish, we just brought her along, and it was just kind of part of what life was like growing up for her. And so, like, at this point, she has served 3 weeks at CAP with me herself. Again, I just see an impact that it has had on her life. As far as my own life experience and the impact that CAP has had, I've already described that during those years that I've been volunteering with CAP, it has grown over time that I just keep seemingly getting more and more involved as time goes on, to the point that what started off as like a 1 week long commitment each year to bring a group of Michigan State students down to serve at CAP has really turned into a year-long engagement for me, because I start recruiting new schools to come and serve at WorkFest with us quite literally the week after WorkFest from the previous year ends, because many of these schools just have such a long-term planning stage that if we want to get on their, I just spoke to a school yesterday that their spring break calendar for 2024 is already full. We're already talking to them about signing up for WorkFest 25.
So I know that I've gotten to see your hilarious postings on social media, as well as all of the, shenanigans is just the best word at WorkFest. Just a lot of creativity and fun. So tell me, where do you get your sense of humor from?
I guess it comes from all sorts. I think I've grew up in a family, we were talking about my childhood before. My father had a reputation of being a storyteller and a very sarcastic individual, and just kind of gallows humor when we were working at the family-run business all those years. And so that really planted the seed. But yeah, these days it just... inspiration comes from everywhere. I think my wife and daughter are very entertaining and keep me laughing. And, social media and movies and TV, there's just always these things. I quite literally keep a list of ideas for WorkFest in my phone. They say that good artists copy and great artists steal. So I'll admit that very little of my content is perhaps brand new, but I'm just constantly writing down ideas of, oh man, I gotta remember that for WorkFest, or I will see something that I want to try. My big, every year, every couple of years, I'll introduce something new and big and exciting for WorkFest that I'm really happy with. And so last year was my Wheel of Whatever. I built this giant game show wheel that's like, 3 or 4 foot diameter, and it has steel pegs around it. And when you give it a spin, it's got the classic like Wheel of Fortune, click, 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 click. Once you have a game show wheel, you can find all sorts of uses for it. So that's where I took to calling it the Wheel of Whatever, because it has a chalkboard surface. So I can erase what's on the wheel and then use it for whatever I see fit. So we can, if I'm having trouble at WorkFest finding volunteers, I can put names on it and spin the wheel of names. So yeah, the Wheel of Whatever was a great innovation for 2023 WorkFest, and it's coming back in 24. So, but it's stuff like that. It's stuff like that that I will get these ideas, and then like I spent way too much time building that wheel, like all last fall and winter in the lead up to WorkFest. And it really captivates me and has become an outlet for my creative energies.
Well, the other thing I know you for is being a Michigan State Spartan. So what does that mean to you? Because I've seen a lot of green and white at WorkFest as well.
They tell you when you start in the College of Engineering that you get your 8 years to finish your PhD. And I took them up on that offer and went every semester that I could till they were about to kick me out, and then graduated right at the end. So I spent 8 years as a student at MSU. My wife has worked there now for, I think, over 20 years. I think she just passed her 20-year anniversary. And we lived right off of campus, like a half mile off of Michigan State's campus amongst the students. And so we had all of the chaos that goes along with living in a college town. There's just many aspects to being associated to Michigan State University. These days, I think I'm a bit further removed from all of it.
So we've talked a lot about humor and the funness of what WorkFest is, but thinking about Michigan State, I want to ask you a more serious question. In February 2023, there was a shooting on the campus. How did your faith help you make sense of that? And how did you help the students that you get to serve with work through that trauma, or even your daughter and in your own family?
I'll answer that a few ways. So in terms of making sense of it, I don't know that I can, right? I think we live in a world that has many negative aspects in it. There's true evil that resides in our world, and it's just, I don't know that I can make sense of many of those things. And we see these things in the news every day, and some of them strike closer to home, yet at the same time, we have all sorts of voices saying that this is just kind of the new normal and the status quo, and we should accept it and move on, right? So some of those things become honestly very discouraging. I guess personally, I've just always tried and continue to try to be a voice of light, a voice of humor. If I can bring a smile to somebody's face, even in the dark times, that's kind of where I see my role fitting in. As far as like my actual ties to MSU during that whole time period back in February, as I said, if anything, I kind of felt like almost like we were getting sympathy in a false sense, that it was misplaced, because, again, my family and I live 20 miles off of campus at this point. I haven't been a student there in equally as long, maybe 15 years at this point or something. My wife works there, and so she's on campus majority of the days. She works from home a couple days a week, but she had been on campus the day of the shooting. But by the time that all started, it was later at night, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, if I remember correctly. So she had been home for quite some time. So yeah, it feels definitely closer to home than many of the events that you witness. We were lucky in our own little corner of the world that the students that came to CAP with me this past year, so which would have only been 2 or 3 weeks after the shooting incident on campus, none of them were anywhere near where all of the events took place, so they didn't have much direct experience except for some of those that live in the dorms and, were in lockdown for a while. That's a terrifying experience in its own right. So yeah, I think it's a mixed bag of emotions, and I think you hear people say all the time, oh, I just would never think that it would happen in our town, but I think the reality is that over time, it just seems like it will happen everywhere, right? Unless we finally get the courage to make changes that are truly going to impact the situation.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Your generosity has a direct and positive impact in the lives of people in need in Appalachia every day. It is the unwavering support of faithful friends like you that make this work possible. Many of our supporters are beginning to plan and envision what kind of legacy they want to leave to support the causes that are near and dear to their hearts. CAP is happy to provide a safe and easy experience for people to create a will and support CAP through non-cash gifts. Through our partnership with Free Will, CAP offers our donors the ability to create a will online and alter it at no charge. Our partnership with Free Will also includes their Smart Giving Suite, which allows donors to give through their IRA, donor advised funds, and stock online, in addition to creating a will for free. In recent years, Appalachia has faced unrelenting challenges, including the pandemic, inflation, and back-to-back natural disasters. You can make a life-changing impact and leave a legacy of hope in Appalachia. To learn more about non-cash giving opportunities, please visit christianapp.org/more ways to give.
We know that we value your service here in Appalachia, but how has that informed how you see your community and how you've been involved in your local community?
And we tell our student volunteers this when they come to WorkFest, that until you kind of immerse yourself in a region that has experienced the long-standing financial hardships like Appalachia has, until you encounter families that are struggling, it is easier to recognize all of those things, even in a more diluted sense, once you've seen them in such a concentrated form. And so my time at CAP, just like with many of our student volunteers, has just shaped the perspective that I view the rest of the world. I think I am more aware of, more prone to seeing the needs in my own community than I was prior to my time serving at CAP. Leading the alternative spring break program at our parish was really what started me down this path of leading other service projects. So for a number of years then, I was also doing something more in our local community that we called Mercy in the Summer, where we would take a group of college student volunteers and we would volunteer on like an every other Friday sort of basis throughout the summer. Overall, that added up to 8, 9 different service events all day long that we would partner with different nonprofits. It just has that snowball effect. The more you do those things, the more people get to know you. You kind of get identified as the service guy, right? And so then you mentioned earlier that even though it started with leading the college groups, I've come down with groups of alumni from the alternative spring break programs. We also did a parish mission trip where we had just a variety of random people that signed up to join us. So that particular summer, which I think was 2019, our youngest volunteer was 14, a high school sophomore. Our oldest volunteer was in their early 80s, and everything in between. And so it's great seeing that multi-generational type of spirit, because that's another one of the things that CAP tries to instill, like when we have our volunteers, that we have all these mixed ages working side by side with one another. And there too, when you do something like that, when you lead a trip like that, just a few weeks back, I had a guy who I've never met from a parish that is counties away said, "Hey, I'm interested in leading a mission trip with volunteers from my church." I reached out to my pastor and he said, "I don't know where to turn you towards, but I know this guy in Lansing that might be able to help you out." And so it's cool just kind of being known as like the mission trip guy to a bunch of people that I've never met. And I think that really allows me to leverage the number of volunteers that we get to serve at CAP.
If you had to give a life lesson that has stuck with you, what would it be?
I'm so tempted to say something snide, right? What life lesson? I think the biggest virtue that is overlooked just in so many aspects of life is patience. I think many bad decisions just in life in general come down to impatience, whether that is people dropping out of school because they want to go make the fast money, if it's people that buy a house that they aren't quite equipped to fully pay for, getting into relationships and settling down with the wrong person. I don't know. Impatience just seems to be like a very prolific problem, and many of life's problems could be avoided if you just take the time to pump the brakes a little bit and give it time to settle things out.
The mission statement of Christian Appalachian Project is building hope, transforming lives, and sharing Christ's love through service in Appalachia. Hope, transformation, love, and service. Which one resonates with you the most when you think of Appalachia?
So I'm going to take a cop-out and say that all of those things resonate with me, because every time I hear our mission statement or when I'm doing these recruitment calls and I speak that mission statement myself, it just sounds like a perfect description of WorkFest. You know, building hope. We are literally out there building homes, making houses safe, and just more accessible for the families we are serving with. Transforming lives, that goes for the folks, that we are serving with and fixing up their homes. But I've also seen how WorkFest can transform the lives of those that are volunteering with us. It is no mistake that Father Biden chose to have Christian be the very first word in our name. Christ is at the center of everything that we do. When we go out onto our work sites for WorkFest, we pray before we leave. We pray when we get there. We pray over our meals. We share our personal reflections on what our faith means to us. We have the different student groups leading devotions each day. And so it's all of those things where when I see the CAP mission statement, WorkFest to me just seems to be the perfect encapsulation of all of those things.
I'll let you take your cop out. Good answer. John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for taking the time with me, and I really appreciate the chance once again to tell my stories, because I always like a good audience.
Our guest today has been John Oliva, a mechanical engineer who also serves with Christian Appalachian Project as an ambassador. We hope you've enjoyed the show and check out next week's episode. Tell your friends to check us out too. You can follow the work of Christian Appalachian Project on all social media channels. Find the show online at christianapp.org/podcast or anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode.